Hey YouTube, welcome back to the second part of my tutorial about how to make these steel cans into these models. In the first part I covered the tools that we're going to use and the different cans that we can use and we cannot use. Also some safety things, and now we're actually going to start processing the can and getting it ready and turning it into a workable sheet of metal. Before we start, let's talk for a moment what we're actually trying to achieve. So you can see that when you take just this sheet steel, so this is a small part, and you can see that it's very flexible. It doesn't even hold its own weight. You can just bend it like that, and we want to create a structure from it, and we want to make the basic building blocks that are used in real-world constructions. Here you can see an L profile, and you can already see that an L profile, when I apply pressure to it, it doesn't bend. And that will create our structure, and that is how real-world construction is also done. And you can see these things in bridges and skyscrapers and machines and whatever you want to look at. So what we want to do now in this first stage, where we're just learning how to work with basic shapes and putting them all together, we're going to create what is called a bull guard for this model. It's basically a hopper, so that means that material will go inside, and we want to make a structure that will break clumped materials that might fall inside, and that's what we're going to produce through these first stages of the tutorial. And you're going to use these L profiles. We're going to learn how to make them. We're also going to learn how to make U profiles and Z profiles and use them later in this model. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done on it, but slowly as the tutorial progresses, we're going to learn how to make these different things. So I'm going to start. I'm going to take this can and use my scissors. Now I'm going to remove the top part, and then I'm going to remove the bottom part, and then I'm going to cut it in the middle and open it up. Obviously I cleaned it, just cleaned it with warm water and soap, and let it dry for a few moments, shake it around, get everything out there. So you can see that you just start your first cut. You always want to start it at the seam here, so that it doesn't bend the metal. This is the strongest part of the cylinder, and when you apply your initial cut here, it won't bend the metal. You can see that when you start it's a bit difficult, but once you get past the seam, then it's going easy, and that's why you need to use these heavy shears to do that. You can't really use the lighter ones. And as you go with the cut, always remove this extra material. And you can see that when you're cutting it, it flies all around, so as I said, make sure to have safety glasses and such. Okay, so we got our top off. It was a bit difficult. It depends really on the thickness of the can, and you can see that the inside is made out of plastic, and around it there is a cylinder that holds it in place. And now we're going to remove the bottom part of the can. So now you can see what happened here is that you want to try and keep a straight line, otherwise it just cuts one end and makes it more difficult. But luckily we're not going to do this all the time. There we go. Okay. So we got the bottom part off. You can see now it's just a cylinder, and now we're going to start cutting along the seam, and you will see that slowly as we progress through the middle and beyond. Yeah, it's going to start wanting to open up to its natural form. So I've cut one side, and I'm going to start from the other side as well. You don't want to put there we go. Now when you're cutting, you don't want to cut all the way to the end, because then you'll just tear the metal, like happened here at the end. You can see that. You want to cut up until like a centimeter from the end, and then you open the shears and you move them a bit forward, and then you continue. And we've opened it, so you can see we have this side with the lamination on it, and we have the inside which has a thin coating in there. It has another coating which is a polymer, and basically we want to remove the polymer, but since we can't see it, we need to remove also the thin coating here. And we're going to start first of all by removing this seam here. We don't really need the seam. So at this stage, when you're processing the can, you can see that the edges are very sharp, and just be careful and use common sense when you're handling this, so you won't cut yourself. Use the little ones, it's much more easier at this stage. So again, I'm handling the sheet metal quite carefully, because any wrong movement will get this thing to cut you, and you want to avoid that. Okay, so we have removed all the things that we don't need, and we have now this piece of sheet metal. It's still not ready, We still have these rough edges here. It still has a sort of semi-cylindrical shape, and we also need to still sand it before we can work with it. But this is the first part. Let me just remove this. There we go. So okay, so we've cut it open. And the next stage is we want to straighten it out. We want to make a nice straight sheet. So the way we do that is we have a hard surface here that we can work on. And we basically take like an old mat. You want to create a soft surface. Something like a mat, something that the material can sink into a little bit. And we just take our sheet and we place it on the mat, and then we use this thing right here. So everybody knows what that is. It's a kitchen thing. I don't know how you call it in English, but you just work the material. And a few passes, you can already see that it's becoming straighter. So we're going to apply a little bit more pressure to it. There we go. Okay, so there's our sheet of metal. It's still not completely straight. That is because it has these edges around. When you're cutting metal, you're not actually removing material. You're just pushing the material aside, and that shrinks the metal and it prevents it from straightening out completely. But we're going to take care of that right now. So we're just going to remove this out of the way. Okay, so we want to cut these edges now. The way we're going to do that, simple. We're going to place our sheet of metal on the work area. We're going to take our aluminum ruler and we're going to take our utility knife, just like that. You want to remove 2 millimeters, roughly 2 millimeters from the edge of all this around here. And if you see like there is a flaw or a really sharp dent in the material, then you want to try and remove it as well. If it's something that is not really a sharp bend, then you can always straighten it out. But if you like really torn the material, then yeah, you need to remove that part. So you just place it like that, nothing precise, and you start with the knife to scorch the material like that. Now, you need to apply pressure to do that, and this is something that you will get once you start actually working with these things. You have different thicknesses, so some sheets you will need to make like 6 passes to get a cut, some sheets 8 passes, some sheets less, and you will get the hang of that. I suggest you just take a piece of metal and you start scorching it and count how many times with the same pressure you're doing, and then you'll get a feel for the material. Once you scorched it, you can see on the other side that also the mark appears here. I don't know if you can see that, but after 5 passes roughly the mark appears, and I can take just a small needle nose pliers, and I grab the edge just like that, just before the cut, and I play with it until it tears off. So I'm going to do it all along the way. Now, I can assure you there are much more efficient ways of doing this. You can buy a guillotine, you can probably do it with some sort of an electrical tool, but since we're using only things that are available to us, we're just going to do it the nice old-fashioned way and enjoy the time that we're investing in this hobby. So there we go. I'll remove this part and we have a nice clean cut, really straight. We're going to do the same thing for all the sides of the sheet. So again, okay, so we have our piece ready. We cut all the sides. We have nice sides with no shards in them or anything like that. And what we need to do now is just go through it a few times on a hard surface just to straighten everything out. We have here a small edge that was bent. There we go. Okay, so we have our sheet, and the next step is we want to get this lamination off, and we want to sand it down until we don't have this silvery surface inside, and we just want to have a clean piece of sheet metal. So the way we do that is we take some sanding paper and we're going to cut off a piece just like that. You can use a wooden block, you can use any way that you feel comfortable, and you just put it down and start sanding it off. Now, you can use electric tools, obviously, you can use a sander. When you use electric tools, be careful because it's very easy to put a bit of too much pressure on one spot, and then you take out a lot of the material as well. You don't want to do that. That's why I prefer doing it by hand. I do have a Dremel tool. I can just use the Dremel tool, but you're not really producing that many sheets that, well, depends really on how many models you're going to build, but you're not really producing that many sheets that you need to buy a dedicated tool for. So I'm going to sand it down, I'm going to sand the top lamination, and I'm going to be back soon. Okay, so 10 minutes later, a bit of grueling work, but we have our steel sheet, and now we have finished processing the can. This is raw material that we can now put a template on and start cutting out our parts. So this is something that I'm going to show in the third part. As I said, I'm trying to keep these tutorials, this tutorial short, and you learn how to process your can, you learn how to extract the material from it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the tutorial, and I'll see you in the third part. Thanks for watching.